Before diving into today's profound geopolitical analysis, if you find this content valuable, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Your support helps us continue delivering expert insights into international security and global diplomacy. The Invisible War, understanding the future of national security. Everyone, if you do not understand the Invisible War, you cannot understand the security of the future. Today's video is not content produced to emotionally criticize a specific country or to foment political confrontation. The purpose of this video is to collectively ponder a much more fundamental question. Why do the world's most powerful nations today view intelligence, the economy, technology, public opinion, supply chains, and cyberspace as the core battlegrounds of national security, even before guns and missiles? Why is modern defense no longer the exclusive domain of soldiers, but rather expanding into a matter of survival for the entire nation, encompassing corporations, universities, research institutes, the media, financial markets, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, rare earth elements, submarine cables, and data centers? And why have national parliaments and governments determined that traditional intelligence agencies alone struggle to counter these new threats, leading them to prepare new national security strategies that integrate the military and industry, as well as the economy and diplomacy? If we fail to grasp the background of these shifts, it will be exceedingly difficult to properly understand the forthcoming international order. Wars of the past were visible. When armies crossed borders, tanks rolled in, and fighter jets soared through the sky, anyone could tell that a war had begun. However, modern warfare is not like that. A nation's industry can collapse without a single gunshot. Financial markets can be shaken without a single missile being fired. And public opinion can be swayed by external influence without a single soldier crossing a border. Understanding this entirely new form of competition and conflict is the most crucial objective of today's lecture. Why the Department of Defense? The United States mandated a report on China's malign influence by May 2027. They could have easily received this report through U.S. intelligence agencies like the CIA, FBI, or DNI. So why did they specifically instruct the Department of Defense, formerly the Department of War, to do this? The reason the U.S. Congress directed the Department of Defense, DoD, to report on China's malign influence is that modern influence operations between states have evolved beyond the simple realm of intelligence. They have become a substantive threat that requires action at the level of military, defense, and total national mobilization. Furthermore, the premise that intelligence agencies only report, they are not organizations that formulate policy or execute operations, allows us to infer a highly accurate judgment that is 100% correct from the perspective of national security studies. So, why did the U.S. Congress mandate the DoD instead of the CIA, FBI, or DNI? It comes down to the limits of legal authority and the legislative nature of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. 1. The nature of the NDAA and legal authority. The most superficial yet powerful reason Congress bypassed intelligence agencies and demanded this report from the DoD is that the legal foundation for this mandate is the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, integration of budget and legislative power. The NDAA is fundamentally a law that controls the budget and policies of the U.S. DoD because it is drafted and led by the House and Senate Armed Services Committees. The primary target upon which direct obligations can be imposed through this law is naturally the Secretary of Defense. Limited influence over other agencies. While the NDAA occasionally includes clauses related to the intelligence community, IC, the CIA, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, DNI are fundamentally controlled by the Intelligence Authorization Act, IAA, and relevant intelligence committees, the FBI being under the Department of Justice. DOJ is primarily overseen by the Judiciary and Appropriations Committees, therefore to force military and strategic countermeasures against the Chinese threat. In connection with defense budget execution, designating the DoD as the direct recipient is the most efficient route. 2. Paradigm shift in malign influence. This is necessary to prepare for gray zone tactics and hybrid warfare. Past influence operations were largely in the realm of intelligence, agency turf wars, focusing on recruiting spies or spreading disinformation. However, modern China's so-called unrestricted warfare and three warfares, psychological, media, and legal warfare, constitute a total national war, with no boundaries between the civilian and military sectors. Countering gray zone tactics. Before mobilizing conventional forces for all-out war, China attempts to disrupt U.S. supply chains, steal advanced military technology, and drive wedges between the U.S. and its allies like South Korea and Japan. This is not merely a target for intelligence collection. It is an act that directly pollutes the U.S. military's operational environment. The need for military defense, because China's malign influence is infiltrating in the form of land purchases around U.S. military bases, cyber attacks on military communication, networks, and psychological warfare against U.S. service members. Congress defined this as a, quote, military security threat, and directed the DoD to inspect defense postures across the entire military. 3. Protection of the supply chain and defense industrial base. The aspect of China's malign influence that Congress takes most seriously is the infiltration of Chinese capital and technology into U.S. defense contractors and military supply chains. Note from the original text, defense industrial base, data-driven imaging biomarker image diagnosis, based on digital data without using harmful chemicals. DoD's inherent authority. The direct administrative authority to manage the U.S. Defense Industrial Base, VET, which companies are qualified to supply military weapon components and exclude Chinese parts or software. G. Section 1260H rests exclusively with the DoD. Linkage to practical sanctions. The CIA or FBI can recognize technology, theft, or influence peddling by Chinese companies, but they cannot execute policies to cancel military supply contracts or rebuild defense supply chains. Congress is laying the groundwork to receive the report by May 2027 and subsequently use the DoD's budget to enforce follow-up measures that forcibly reduce dependence on China. 4. Managing global security cooperation networks. China's influence operations target not only the U.S. homeland, but also allies worldwide, including the Asia-Pacific, Europe, and Africa. The center of military diplomacy. The U.S. DoD communicates daily with allied militaries and establishes joint defense plans through its globally deployed Unified Combatant Commands, e.g. Indo-PACOM. Executing security cooperation funding. Congress has tasked the DoD with utilizing its security cooperation funds to help allies counter China's malign influence, such as the encroachment on strategic ports via China money. This signifies the need for the movement of official, massive military and diplomatic assets, which goes far beyond the scope of intelligence agencies' covert operations. Separation of intelligence and policy, evaluating institutional roles. Let's evaluate the inference. Intelligence agencies only report; they are not policy or operational organizations. We must view this through the core mechanism of the U.S. national security system, the separation of intelligence and policy. Here is an in-depth explanation of why this inference is absolutely correct. 1. Constitutional and legal nature of the intelligence community, IC. U.S. intelligence agencies strictly adhere to the fundamental principle of policy neutrality. We do not make or execute policy. Duty to maintain objectivity. If intelligence agencies formulate policies and lead operations themselves, the risk of quote-unquote intelligence politicization, distorting or cherry-picking intelligence to justify their own policies or operational successes drastically increases. The lessons learned from the WMD, intelligence failures during the 2003 Iraq War, the role of the messenger. Therefore, the mission of the CIA and DNI is strictly limited to the role of a, quote, guide, providing raw facts and objective analysis so that policymakers, the White House, DoD, NSC, can make wise decisions. 2. Clarity of agency functions and limitations. Each agency is confined to its specific technical domain and cannot oversee or execute a massive national level. China countermeasure policy. Agency primary mission and limitations. CIA focuses on overseas human intelligence collection and analysis. While it has authority for covert action under a presidential finding, this is merely a supplementary tool, not an organization that creates a public, nationwide defense plan against China. FBI handles domestic counterintelligence and investigations within the U.S. homeland. It forcefully executes judicial responses, arresting spies, prosecuting tech thieves, but this is post-incident punishment, far from establishing preventive global military strategies. DNI acts as a control tower to coordinate the budgets and intelligence of 18 agencies. It lacks a physical organization to move troops or execute independent policies. 3. The monopoly of the DoD, combining policy formulation and execution. In contrast, the DoD possesses the largest budget among U.S. government departments, $901 billion, massive organizational structure, and the unique authority to handle both policy and execution simultaneously. Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, OUSDP. The DoD houses not just soldiers, but a massive bureaucratic organization dedicated to formulating national security strategy and policy. The report Congress wants isn't just an intelligence bulletin listing bad things China has done. It must include a policy roadmap answering, so how will we change and defend the U.S. military and defense industry? Therefore, the DoD is the right fit. Legal coercive power. The DoD has the administrative muscle to maneuver troops, control defense contracts, and legally execute budgets. Based on intelligence reports, the DoD is the only entity that can actually forge the shield and swing the sword. 4. Congressional logic of checks and balances. From the perspective of the U.S. Congress, shaking up the DoD, rather than intelligence agencies, maximizes the effect of checking China. Intelligence reports are mostly classified as top secret, accessible only to a select few on intelligence committees. They are not released to the public, making it difficult to shape political public opinion. Conversely, reports mandated to the DoD excluding classified annexes are largely released to the public unclassified reports. This can be utilized as a public opinion warfare card to alert the world to the Chinese threat. Moreover, because Congress can tightly control the DoD with the definitive weapon of the budget, NDAA, enforcing policy implementation is much easier. Summary and overall assessment. This inference is spot on. The reason the U.S. Congress demanded the report on China's malign influence from the DoD by May 2027 is that they are well aware of the limitations of intelligence agencies like the CIA or FBI. They excel at being the eyes and ears, intelligence collection, but cannot act as the hands and feet policy execution and operations. Congress deliberately chose the DoD as the controlling entity to take the fragmented intelligence on China, collected by the IC, throw it into the massive melting pot of the Department of Defense, and forge it into a practical defense strategy and policy that revises the U.S. military's global operational plans, cleans up the defense supply chain, and strengthens solidarity with allies. To conclude today's lecture, I would like to reflect on a passage from Mencius. 生于忧患. Life springs from sorrow and calamity. People survive because they remain vigilant and exert effort during difficult times and hardships. 死于安乐. 死于安乐. Death comes from ease and pleasure. Conversely, if one is steeped only in a carefree and comfortable life without worries, they become negligent and ultimately perish. A nation survives through vigilance and preparation, and perishes through complacency and neglect. This saying does not apply solely to nations. Individuals, corporations, and societies can only sustain growth when they possess the posture to prepare for the future. The moment we ignore change, danger grows. The moment we prepare for change, new opportunities open up. I hope today's lecture has provided you, our viewers, with an opportunity to understand the international situation more multidimensionally, and to view national security and the international order with a critical yet balanced perspective. Thank you for staying with me until the end. We will continue to deliver deep insights by bridging history, philosophy, international politics, and security. If you enjoyed this analysis, please subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications. Sharing this video gives us immense strength to continue spreading this crucial knowledge with more people.